Okay, everyone, welcome to today's webinar on understanding IPMVP. So today we'll be talking about measuring and verifying energy savings in your state, how you go about that, the protocols to achieve it, and the data that you need. I'm going to bring you through quickly a brief agenda and introduce you to our two speakers before we get stuck into it. So today we'll just do introductions, as I said. We'll talk a bit around what is M&V, the required data and challenges with that. We'll talk about IPMVP, which is a protocol for M&V. We'll talk about applying that then in a business context. And then Jon at the end is going to bring you through the future of what that looks like, 5 steps within your business to actually implement it in a practical way, and then talk a bit more about automated technology and how we can achieve M&V processes in a much cleaner, faster way. So before we go into the session, Andy and Jon, do you just want to briefly introduce yourselves? Andy, do you want to go first?
So, hi everyone, I'm Andy, the Innovation Data Director here at LoConX. My role primarily is to use all of the data within our centralized data platform to help customers optimize their energy usage and maintenance aspects of their estates.
Hi, I'm Jon Laughland. Hi, I'm Jon Laughland. I am Head of Partnerships. I'm in the sales team. My role is to work with partners across the globe in bringing the LoConX platform to our customers, and I also look after some strategic accounts across the globe.
Awesome. Right, well, we'll just get stuck straight into it. Andy, I'm going to start with you for some tough questions to begin with. So do you want to start off and just explain just what M&V actually is?
Yeah, sure. So what is measurement verification, or M&V? Measurement verification is a process that we go through to be able to understand and quantify the impact of our energy conservation measures, or ECMs. So an energy conservation measure is something that we carry out, such as asset replacement or asset optimization, with a view that we'll ultimately be saving energy at the end of it.
And could you just talk us around a bit more of those steps? So like, I know it's like about planning, collecting, measuring, and analysing data. What's involved at each of those stages within the M&V process?
Yeah, so as you said, M&V is a process. The first phase in the process is planning. So this involves us understanding why and how we're aiming to save energy, what data we have available to us to validate it, any gaps that we need to be aware of, and more importantly, gaining buy-in from all the key stakeholders to the measurement and verification process. Without planning, M&V can fail, or it can lead to outcomes that we can't actually stand over. The second phase in the process is all about data collection. So we need to ensure that we collect the necessary data, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But ultimately, if we don't have the right data, M&V just can't proceed. Third phase is all about the measurement period. So when we're certain we're in a good place with all of the necessary prep and data, the ECM can be implemented, and then we can monitor the post-implementation energy consumption. And again, we gather this data along with the other data points that we've detailed within our planning collection phases. The final step in the process is all about the analysis. So we start to analyze all of this data scientifically to ensure that we can actually provide accurate outcomes.
Okay. And I guess with all that, people may be sitting here being, well, why do we need to do M&V? Like, what's the actual reasoning behind doing the process? Like, why would companies want to start doing this?
Yes, there's a number of reasons why we carry out M&V. M&V, when done correctly, ensures accuracy and transparency. All of the data, methodology, and results are available to everyone, and it's reproducible. And through having stakeholders buy into it early on, it provides a level of trust and accountability in the results that we produce. So through accurate M&V, we can also truly understand the outputs of our efforts, and we can use this to understand the true return on our investment. And this can lead to further business cases and also investment in energy saving activities further down the line. And as well as what I've just described, there's also the sustainability aspect of this as well. So energy and sustainability go hand in hand, and through doing one, you're actually actively contributing to the other.
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of verifying all those actions that companies are doing within their sustainability strategy to basically prove this is having the desired impact that we needed to have, and then actually hit those business goals. Is that right?
Exactly that.
Yeah. Okay. So whenever it comes to doing M&V, like what type of data do companies need to look at? I know we have a couple of examples on the screen here, but like, could you just give us a bit more of an explanation of like what each of those things are? Like, what does that data look like and where they get it from?
Yeah, sure. So as a minimum, there needs to be some form of energy data available. And typically and ideally, this would either be half-hourly MPAN data, so that's data from your main meters, or it could be sub-meter data. But alternatively, utility bills can also provide us with the energy consumption data we need. We need to have enough of this energy data prior to the ECM being deployed so that we can accurately assess and also take into account all the seasonality and trends that we'd look for. So typically we'd be looking for about a year's worth or multiples of a year of energy data prior the ECM being implemented. But additionally, more data available, the better. So as measurement and verification is broadly speaking, it's modeling. We can also use other data that has a contributing impact on energy consumption to help us with that modeling. So, for example, weather data, trading or operational hours, and also building occupancy. All of these can help us to better understand those energy consumption trends, which can lead to better modeling, and better modeling leads to more accurate insights.
Yeah, I guess, Andy, you probably agree with this. Before a company really looks in any energy approach really, but particularly M&V, it's important really to have that energy baseline there, isn't it? And really understand, do we have enough data there to actually work off, where if we run an initiative, we can measure did it do well or not, and how do we improve that?
Yeah, exactly that. And that all comes down to the process of M&V. I mean, we've got the 4 steps, and that all falls into that planning aspect.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess what we're kind of touching on, we're looking into challenges really with that. I know I've kind of said there about having that data, and we've really emphasized that. Is there any other challenges that companies need to keep in mind before they get into an M&V process, things that they might come across, and how do they rectify those whenever they get there?
Yeah, so there's always the typical challenges that we face, and you see these day in, day out. So poor data quality or no data at all. This limits the options available for M&V and ultimately reduces the ability to actually provide accuracy for the output. An unclear methodology or lack of one altogether, it can lead to trust breakdown, and it can also lead to multiple different outputs. So taking the example of different outputs, if you have them, how do you know which one you can actually trust? You've got the impact versus effort trade-off. So M&V in the past is quite a time-consuming endeavor, and without putting the necessary effort into the analysis, it could lead to the impact actually not truly representing the real picture, or you could actually be missing out on benefits that you've actually achieved, but you can't actually account for because you haven't put the effort into it.
Mhm.
And lastly, you actually need to buy into it and understand why we're doing M&V in the first place. And ultimately, we're doing it because we want to stand over and accurately understand the impact that we're having.
Yeah, I think the word accuracy has been thrown out quite a lot here, and looking into like methodologies and words like that. But I think more and more businesses that step into this sustainability, like ESG, net zero world, are looking to invest in these strategies. Having that real robust methodology and process in place to ensure that what they're doing actually is verified and follows some sort of protocol is really important. I guess that really leads into the topic of today, which is IPMVP. Andy, could you actually explain this? What does this big acronym mean? And bring us through really a breakdown of it.
Yeah, sure. So IPMVP is the International Performance Measurement and Verification Protocol, and it's a framework that exists with a methodology to follow really to ensure accuracy in the M&V results. And it's just recognized worldwide. So it's a good framework to use to be able to stand over those results time after time.
Okay, awesome. I know within that there's like these 4 options of assessment. Could you bring us through each of these and explain really like what each one means? Like, where would you use them perhaps? Like, why would you use one over the other? And just bring us kind of through how that's applied.
Yeah, so there's 4 options for assessment. You've got option A, B, C, and D, and each of them has a slightly different take on the M&V process. Options B and C are the ones which are more widely used, especially for the ECMs that involve assets whose energy consumption is heavily dependent on external factors, which is what we face day in, day out. So any asset that is impacted by the weather, option B or option C would be the go-to methodology. But understanding which option to take really falls into the planning element of the M&V process, and you'd go through that planning process and document which option you're looking to take on and get everyone bought into it. Option B, in short, focuses on measuring the energy consumption of the asset or system alone and not the entire building, and you'd need sub-meters fitted to be able to carry out that method. Option C looks at the building as a whole, and this is where you'd be using the MPAN data or utility bill data.
Okay, so with option B, then you would need to have the sub-meters there. Do you have to invest in infrastructure before you can do that?
So sometimes the sub-meter's already fitted, in
Yeah,
which case it's just getting access to the data, ingesting it, and then carrying out the modeling therein.
yeah.
Other
I
times you
guess,
do need to invest a small amount in installing a sub-meter, and in the scheme of things, it's a small price to pay for guaranteeing
yeah.
accuracy of your results.
I guess it just depends then on the nature of your estate. So, to the audience, it's probably important to understand, what is within our sites, what do we have in our buildings, what type of M&B can we do then as a result of the infrastructure that we have, and where there's gaps, maybe looking in to see, right, could we resolve that before we start this process? Do you reckon that's important to do that
Uh,
first?
it's incredibly important to do that. And again, it comes back to the 4 steps of M&B, and it goes back to that planning process, getting everyone bought in, seeing where we do have gaps and addressing it all up front before you move on to the next phase.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Um, Could you bring us through these core principles? I know it's quite very buzzwordy on the screen, but it's kind of really hammers home the importance of having that methodology. Could you just talk us through what each of these words mean, and the principles of M&V?
Yeah, sure. So these are our own internal principles of why we follow the IPMVP. So obviously the IPMVP allows us to generate accurate, complete, consistent and transparent results time after time. And through doing that, we can actually have our results validated by third parties if required. So we can stand up to scrutiny. The IPMVP, it's conservative in that it helps us to avoid those inconsistencies that can arise from a lack of consideration of different important aspects. And finally, it just produces relevant information that's needed so that every single stakeholder can understand the output.
Yeah. And that conservative piece, I guess, is really important there. It's like not overestimating the savings, taking the data that you have and really understanding, okay, that's the impact that we've had. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly
Yeah.
that. With any modeling, there's always going to be a margin for error. The IPMVP allows us to account for that margin of error, so we're not overestimating or underestimating. We're producing. Well, it's the Goldilocks moment, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
just right.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, cool. And could you just talk us through this chart? I know it's kind of a bit overwhelming to people who've maybe never seen something like this before. So bring us through really each of those words on the screen, what it means, what we're really looking at.
Yeah, sure. So taking the graph on the screen there, there's a couple of aspects to unpack. We've got the baseline period, the left-hand side of the graph there, and that's the period of time prior to the ECM implementation. So this is where we gather all of our relevant data so that we can produce the modeling that's required. So the energy consumption within this period, we call the baseline energy consumption. In the reporting period, so the right-hand side of the screen there, this is the time post ECM implementation, and there's a couple of things to pick out. We have the adjusted baseline energy consumption, which is the orange line, and this is a mathematical representation of the energy consumption based on those factors that we know can affect energy consumption. So for example, temperature data. We use a method called linear regression to construct these models and assess the accuracy statistically, which allows us to build up those really robust models. And this, in effect, is the energy consumption that should have been if no ECM was implemented whatsoever. Additionally, we have the reporting period measured energy, and this is the energy consumption post us implementing the ECM. So through taking the difference between the orange and the blue lines post ECM implementation, we can actually understand and derive the impact of our ECM.
Okay, cool. So it's really there's such a high level of like data science there, isn't there, to kind of calculate those things out. I guess like it comes back to that really crucial planning stage. I know we keep bringing that forward, but I guess looking at what you just explained and the implementation of this in practice, it's crucial to have that data there, that baseline, understand what your business position is before you even think about implementing a process like this.
Exactly right, yeah. And going through those 4 stages of M&V, it helps us get to this output and this answer, and
Yeah.
it's simple to follow and it's streamlined.
Okay, well, talking more in practice, thanks so much, Andy, for that. It was really, really insightful just to get a bit of a breakdown and really get into more of the technical detail and the data background of how this all works. I guess it's really crucial for us to kind of take that and apply that into a business setting. John, could you really bring us through what does that look like in application? What are we doing at Locanex and maybe a bit more about our offerings and then how does that look in basically today and what does the future of M&V look like from a technology perspective?
Yeah, certainly. So at LoConX, we have a platform that allows you to ingest data and bring it all into one place, whether that's internal data from your other systems, external data, or data that's out in your sites that is connected to the LoConX platform. And we call that the centralized data platform. So we help people ingest, standardize, and unify that data so it becomes operational, and we can then move it into an application like M&V that we'll talk about in a minute.
So could you bring us through, I know Andy's talked a lot around MV, as I said there, from that data lens, more that technical perspective. If I was to take this myself in a business and I was an energy manager or a sustainability manager, we've never really done this process and we want to implement it, what do I need to think of from not necessarily that science lens, but more the business angle?
Well, firstly, really along the lines that Andrew went through about plan, measure, collect, and analyze. There's 5 steps to M&V from a practical point of view. The first one is to understand your objectives. So you've got to understand your energy conservation measures and what you're trying to achieve. So whether that's controlling your heating and cooling, across your estate, that might be your objectives to do that and to drive energy efficiencies from a more centralized control. If that's your objective to do that, you've got to have the right hardware and infrastructure in place. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're going to control H&V across your estate, you've got to have a system and the hardware in place that allows you to centrally control that and not have manual control at the individual sites. So that's the infrastructure and the hardware you need in place. Once that's gained and you've got those in place, you can start then gathering the data from the source elements. So you can pull that data in from your sites around the use before you apply your energy conservation measures. And then you can then start bringing that data into a system like LoConX through our centralized data platform. So you're bringing that data. And then you can use, once that data is collected, and you've got your point of inflection of when you've started to put your ECM in place, you can create the data models through the M&V methodology to start measuring that, and then obviously reporting on that to the wider stakeholders, because some of these measures might yield great energy savings, some might not. So you're going to have a plan about what works and what doesn't, and rolling that across the entire estate.
Yeah. I think it's crucial there, that first point, starting with your objectives and actually knowing why you're going into this is paramount. But I guess it's probably important to highlight too, maybe some of these steps could happen simultaneously. Like once you've got your objectives there, like you can start doing that hardware implementation, getting the submeters on site, which is enabling that data capture. And then as someone's doing that, you could have the data models being built on the side of that to understand those things. So you can probably get a couple of things moving at once here to start that implementation, but it's just ensuring that you've got the right strategy in place before you go.
Correct, yeah. And obviously the tooling like LoConX can help bring that together in a lot more, I guess, accelerated way than trying to do that yourself. And as Andrew went through, some of the drawbacks to these to M&V is that it's very manual and very time consuming, and not all the data is collected. We're using a tool like LoConX. Firstly, that data can be ingested automatically, and then we can move through that M&V stage very quickly because we've automated that as well.
Okay, good. Well, could you, I feel like we've kind of touched on it there, but really talk around like the future of M&V, and we've said there about things being time consuming and a costly process. How is that changing?
Changing because of the likes of the platform that LoConX produces. So historically, it has been a very manual driven process with lots of spreadsheets, lots of data scientists looking over it, bringing all that together into a process for the business, which can take weeks, if not months, to produce. And obviously getting the results then at the tail end after the initiative has been done, you've wasted a lot of time if that initiative isn't actually producing the energy savings that you want. So because of that, the frequency of understanding the results and the inconsistencies that it may drive, you get to this poor data view, and actually a lot of the ECMs have failed and no new initiatives have been taken forward because of the time taken to see a failure. So companies are struggling to achieve their net zero and to actually see the results of their investments moving forward. And actually, a poor investment in energy, as long as you see that quickly, is as good as a large, win with energy. So, seeing those failures and saying that that doesn't work in your estate quickly and failing quickly, but then carrying on those initiatives to find out ones that do work for you, and then pushing them out estate-wide across your company, is we're not hitting them because of the slow nature of M&V in the past.
Yeah, I think it's so crucial too that getting visibility, as you say, of the investments early on is paramount. Like earlier today, I was actually at an event, and that was one of the core topics the guys were talking around. I guess too, as companies start to look, and that 2050 goal of net zero is get quicker. The time for failures and getting things wrong, it's not there anymore. Like they have to be able to look at something and discern, if I do this versus that, which one's going to have the better impact, and have the intelligence to do that quickly. So I guess tools like this really kind of help them achieve that. Could you talk a bit more around, and we've said the terms like automated M&V and automation, what does that actually look like? What have we developed?
So we talked, well, my first slide was about the ingestion of data and what our centralized data platform does. So being able to get the energy readings either from your NPAN data or your utility bills, or connecting in low connects to the submeters, but also the assets. So, controlling over the heating and cooling elements of an estate, for example, and bringing that data in automatically is part of what that centralized data platform. So once we've got that data, our app ingests all of that energy data, the weather data that we talked about, and the occupancy and the operating hours. All of that is done automatically, and then we run through a series of models and combinations of different variables to produce accurate saving reports in minutes across large estates. So that doesn't just have to be one building, it could be across thousands of buildings that this data is ingested from. And then, all of that data is then brought together into these models, and very, very quickly you can get the reports to see if that initiative has worked or not.
Wow. So that's pretty huge, considering what we've talked earlier and said, like one report sometimes could take weeks or months. Like to do that then on a 300, 400 site estate, like, instantly, it's really, really going to save those companies hours and weeks of time. I guess really that's then passing that back to the energy team, letting them do more initiatives, kind of scaling that out and letting them focus more on what they need to do rather than getting kind of bogged down the reporting side of it.
And you're right, and it's not just 300 or 400 sites. Some of the customers that that we have are of the small format retail stores, which may have thousands of sites. But a small saving in each one of those sites, if it's measurable, leads to a huge saving across all of those. So yes, doing that quickly and seeing what works and what doesn't work is crucial to customers now.
I feel like we've talked around the LocalX platform, the centralized data platform, getting the data in. Could you talk more around our Switch platform, which is really focused on that observation, analysis, control element? What are we doing there to help companies really take that data and do something with it?
So this is about that preparation and the objectives, and getting the infrastructure right. So what we can do is bring in data from lots and lots of sites through BMS solutions that are out there that may already exist in the buildings, or from IoT devices, depending on the size. If a BMS doesn't sit within the sort of budgetary remits of a company, depending on the size of the building. But that data then, for those connected assets, whether they're heating and cooling, whether they're refrigeration, lighting, submeters, alarms and system, can all be ingested into our system. We can then visualize that across the whole of the estate, so we can show you exactly how that estate is working. We can then provide some analysis across that, because we normalize the data across all of that estate, so we can put analysis through it, and we can put intelligent rules across it as well for example, if a if a store closes at 10 o'clock or a site closes at 10 o'clock and the occupancy is done and an alarm has been set, we could see that alarm's been set, that the out of hours office, the out of hours has happened in that building. We can turn the lights off or ensure the lights are dimmed in that building, apart from the signage lights, if it was a retail customer or a retail site, and even the car park lights as well. So it's that automation of processes and outputs all the way through to the control of those assets as well. So the control could be turning HVAC off, turning lights off, putting something into an optimal state without impacting any of the, I guess, compliance issues you've got around buildings as well.
So I see there, like, really Switch centralizes all that data across all those things, and then you can use that centralized data then as part of the M&V. But I think it's important to call out these things can also exist separately. And whilst Switch is kind of an enabler for that, it's not necessarily pivotal to use the M&V tool. Is that right?
It's true. So we've got, Switch is visualization, automation, and control of connected assets. And a part of that application suite that we've got is an automated M&V tool.
Yeah.
Because you may be applying your energy conservation measure through the Switch control element that we provide within our platform.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Could you touch briefly then on the benefits of automated M&V? I know we've talked around a couple of our offerings there, and maybe touched on quite a lot of benefits, offering that level of control, drilling into like HVAC, between BMS, but actually using that switch element to drive the savings, and then automated M&V to verify them. It's kind of a really nice offering, but outside of that, what kind of benefits does this technology offer to users?
Well, from an automated M&V, it's that time, resource, and cost saving, and bringing everything into a time period where you can see that your initiatives are actually working or not. And like I said before, and like we've discussed, actually failing fast is as critical as actually seeing large savings and actually deploying them across the building estate that you've got. But that significant time and resource and cost saving means that initiatives that are working are actually measured correctly and put through and employed through the estate. It also ensures that compliance for emerging regulation happens. What do I mean by that? Obviously, we've got the regulations of driving down greenhouse gas and CO2, but also there is compliance now around things like refrigeration management, which we can start to bring into play as well. CO2 gases and F-gas regulation around that. That all helps to achieve your net zero initiatives faster. And like you said, 2050 is just, everyone thinks, it thinks it's a long way off, but it's just around the corner. And it also allows you to understand the impacts of these investments and which investments to put your money into that are actually going to drive net results for you, rather than actually not drive any investments, any savings for you at all. So it's to optimize that investment decision making. It obviously lowers the business risk, and what I mean by that is, if we put an initiative in play and it fails, that's great, as long as we know it fails quickly. So you're not putting a failure process across for months and months and months before you know that it's actually not saving you any money or any CO2 or any greenhouse gas initiative plays. And it helps you fulfill your ESG goals and requirements from a regulation point of view, but also from a reporting point of view as well, from internal reporting and a compliance reporting as well.
Yeah, it's such a tight range of benefits, but in such impactful ways, I think, at the minute. I think that regulation piece and the way net zero and sustainability has went in recent years in particular. I think one of my favorite lines is that sustainability is no longer this nice to have thing. It's like a commercially essential aspect of business moving forward. And I think companies are really starting to kind of properly wake up to that, in the sense of, a couple of years ago, it was, let's get some data and do some reports and start looking at our carbon footprint. But as they start to realize, oh, we actually have to reduce that thing, how do we do that in a really commercial way that's tied in with finance, makes sense? It's this type of technology that kind of brings all them teams together and really makes it clear, this is the impact of what we're doing and this is how it's going to help the business.
You just have to look at any set of accounts from a company now, and literally the ESG reporting is taken up more and more pages of that company report.
Yeah.
And it's more and more important to investors and to board members alike.
Yeah. As we talk on that, I guess it's kind of clear to make the impact of this tech quite apparent. So we've talked around Switch, we've talked around like the local and centralized data platform, automated M&V. Could you just talk us, it's a pretty brief case study, but really show us an example of what that looks like and the type of savings companies can see from this type of technology?
Very simple use case. Rather than local control over HVAC, the initiative was to automate the HVAC usage between office hours and non-office hours, and actually to keep the control in the office hours to the people that are in the building, but to ensure that when that office was not in use and the occupancy was zero, that the HVAC was switched off overnight, but do that automatically and do it systematically across the whole estate. So they employed LoConX as part of that infrastructure that they needed to initiate that energy conservation message. So that planning was, we know we need to save energy. We know that local control isn't working because HVAC is being run overnight in a large majority of our estates. So we're going to systemize that. And the infrastructure was LoConX. So we automated that HVAC overnight switch off within the whole of their estate, and we saved their average savings per site of 8.4%, which annualized into a monetary figure was £4,238 per site. You then extrapolate that over hundreds and hundreds of sites that they had, you get a very large saving. Yeah. And that initiative was driven very quickly from an infrastructure point of view, and obviously the measurement point of view with the M&V. We could see what their energy bill was before with the IPMV and using our M&V tool, and then when the initiative was deployed, the savings that we could then make moving forward using that automated M&V tooling.
Yeah, it's quite an exciting end-to-end case, but it's great to see all those solutions kind of feeding into each other. And it kind of gives that, between the property team, the energy team, sustainability, like that full remit of everything that they need to have that end-to-end journey of, we're seeing our data, we're doing something about it, we're reporting on it, and then we're going back and doing that loop again and doing it again and again until we hit that goal.
And as with all of our customers, we start with a very simple use case, and heating and cooling and is very energy intensive. That simple use case of ensuring that all of the HVAC was switched off overnight is the start of their journey. It produced a lot of savings per site, which can help now drive smaller incremental initiatives on those sites across to other assets, and actually expand out across all of their sites where they only took a few hundred to start with. We're now looking at thousands of sites moving forward. So again, it's incremental, but the savings are huge, but it also leads to other initiatives because you've hit that low-hanging fruit, and you've got the documented savings and reported savings based on a standard like IPMV.
Yeah, awesome. I think we'll wrap up there anyway. Thanks so much, Andy and John, for your time today, and Andy bringing us through that technical detail at the start. It was really great to get that more data background, and then John taking it within business, giving a bit more application of what we're doing, the technology solutions that are there for people. If anyone does have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. John will be here at the end to answer a couple of questions. If you want to get in touch with John as well, his email is there. And feel free to reach out, and John will get back to you as soon as possible.